We got one more we can touch on before we're out of time, and you know how much I like talking about Caitlin Clark on the pod. Do you
Please.
think that Caitlin Clark's game is going to transition in the W? And then there's an addendum to this, which says, or will she be another Kelsey Plum type player? Which a little bit I disagree with because I think Kelsey Plum has, despite being touted as like a franchise changer, I don't think she's had a bad career, and now she's Olympic gold medalist. She's doing good things in the WNBA. But the question does stand. Do you think Caitlin Clark's game is gonna translate to the WNBA? How do you see her performing when she makes that jump?
I see. I assume the Kelsey Plum comparison potentially comes from those first couple seasons when she was a number one pick and was poised to be a star, and the fit wasn't right there. If you would tell me that
Yeah,
the output we're getting out of Kelsey Plum right now is what we'd be getting out of Caitlin Clark, I'm thrilled. Are you kidding me? Impetus to a title contending team and an Olympic gold medalist? I think I'd be potentially okay with that. Now, do I will say if you look at that class of stars, Boston, Page, Clark, I think Van Lith would be in there. Um, there's a couple others. Olivia Miles is probably a year behind them, but like a couple of those very youngs that like are going to come into that just gargantuan draft class. She might be the one who currently, as far as translating to a star level with the WNBA, has the most to make up. Simply in terms of she needs to prove her balance so that she doesn't land on a team that just sees her as a shooter. She goes well beyond that, but I think they need to make that, you know, feel like it fits really well. But I also think it's a similar learning curve that we saw with Ionescu so far. Whereas obviously Ionescu's been injured and out a lot, but also um, it's understanding that spacing is different, sizing is different, the level of competitiveness changes, and so there's been some transitions in her game that have needed to happen, and Clark may need to do that, and I think she has the acumen to make that happen. Um, so I would say yes, the tools are there, but she's definitely a case of if things are a little quiet in her rookie season, I wouldn't be terribly shocked. But a part of that is because I think there's a couple other names that are more ever ready, right? I think Paige will probably, if she stays healthy and everything goes the way it's looking, she'll end up the number one pick in whatever that draft class is. And because of the way that awards in pro leagues are about the story, she probably ends up rookie of the year. We'll probably end up saying that it should have been Boston, and it'll end up going to Paige. And I'm interested to see where her standing is. So I think it's here to say, are the tools there for Clark? I think absolutely, because if there's anything beyond her playing ability and the analytics behind things, um, her ability to help Iowa get into games and keep things interesting late, not just late game heroics, but like her third quarter play is as impressive as her fourth quarter play. Her ability to when their team is struggling offensively and they're seeing a double digit deficit, her ability to turn a game into a game is a huge get for an AW team. And I just want her to succeed because
yeah,
I hope I want to see a world where she gets like 200, 350 shots a night. Like it's I love watching Caitlin Clark play basketball, so I definitely hope. But I think that the Plum comparison is apt in a way. I think another comparison a lot of people have already been thinking of is Katie Lou Samuelson in that same idea. Like, are you kind of going to be that offensive spark for a team who is fifth of a starting five or possibly the ace off the bench? Or are we going to be talking about Caitlin Clark in terms of being one of the stars? You look at that 3 to C draft with Greiner and Deladon and Skylar Diggins Smith, you're leaning into that direction of are we going to see the most sprouted of stars or is it going to be a different case? It's an interesting mindset. I think it's there for her. I wouldn't be shocked if it's a slower kickoff than what we see from some of the other people in her class.
hmm So let me start with Kelsey Plum's career, and let's look at some of the numbers as what she's done. So she was basically in the starting lineup for the first 3 years of her career, averaging under 10 points a game, usually about 8.5, 9.5 points a game. She was fine. I think the expectation was high enough that being fine felt like still bust level pick because she was supposed to come in and be a franchise changer. She was supposed to be an Asia Wilson. She was a name that people knew, and she was only fine, and people weren't really okay with that. The bubble season was her third season, which is usually where we see the breakout. That didn't really happen, and then the fourth year in Vegas, she got moved to the bench, and she got some coaching, and suddenly everything went up. Her averages went up. Her per 36 went up. She started averaging almost 15 points a game. She was really effective in that bench role, being exactly what you said, Steve. She was a spark instead of trying to be an appendage to the starting lineup. She was a go-to bucket getter, which is at the core of her game. That's who she is off of the bench for the Aces, and it was awesome. I think something important happened there, which is that a team was patient with her, and she got into the league with opportunities to play right away. She got in reps, and that's something that a lot of rookies do not receive, as we well know. So she had some time to get reps under her belt. She finally exploded. And I won't say exploded onto the scene, but she's a player that you want on your team now at this point. She's not a superstar Kalia Copper player, but she's a player that can help a lot of teams in this league. And she is a bucket getter. And Caitlin Clark is the same way. Now, let's talk about some differences. Kelsey Plum is 5'8". Caitlin Clark is 6 foot, allegedly. I know colleges kind of fudge those numbers sometimes, but so that's going to help. You come into the league with a little bit of extra size at the guard position. It helps you hopefully defend a little bit better out on the perimeter against the other good guards in the league. It also helps you just driving to the basket and creating offense. Caitlin Clark's also a certified bucket getter, and I suspect that she will be picked by a team that wants to play her right away. So she should also be getting reps early on in her career, but we just don't know. If she goes and I hate to throw the Fever under the bus because I really do want to be a believer in them this year, but if she went to a franchise like the Fever that maybe didn't have the best coaching, that maybe didn't have the best approach to developing rookies, that maybe didn't instill confidence in her and had the patience to let her develop over the course of multiple seasons, I could easily see a player like Caitlin Clark, who is fascinating to watch in college, fizzle out in the WNBA. I think she has to go to the right situation. And that's really scary because we both enjoy watching her play a lot. But if she goes to the wrong situation, doesn't have good coaching, doesn't have patience in the front office, she might end up just playing full time overseas, and that would make me really sad because I think she could really help a team. Like go to the LA Sparks, right? The Sparks are gonna go on a spending spree in the next season or two and bring in a bunch of stars, and to just have like a young guard with some size who can put up points either off the bench or in the starting lineup. That would be a perfect place for her. But I don't know where she's going to land. So it's really hard to project.
I think there's two really big things that have benefited her that, like, as I look at numbers and stuff, I go, this helped her out big time. One is, and obviously this is comparing a full season to what's currently probably a half season-ish. You're looking at her turnover per game ratio has gone down by almost a full point. She currently is rebounding at a rate that's pretty nuts compared to the previous season. So she was 5.9 boards a night last season. Now she's sitting comfortably at 8 boards a night. To be dropping at 8.1 rebounds a game when you're the primary scoring option on your team and then some, to still be pulling in 8 boards a night from a guard position, I think that shows that there's a versatility play there. And it also shows what I would assume is strength training, spatial training. Like, I think some of those methodologies are showing themselves over, and that's what translates really well. It's why, like, the thing that told me that, like, Aaliyah Boston's ready was seeing all those strength workout numbers that they showed at her last game beyond any of her stats, because I'm just like, I'm seeing that you're putting in the work, and I look at boards especially, and to me that's always been a stat of, like, from almost any draftee. If how are you improving yourself on the offensive and defensive side when it comes to rebounds? Because that tells me a lot of a story about the well-roundedness of a player when I know that it's not their primary function. So, right now, I think we're going to continue to see some of those key indicator improvements for her down the road. But I like that question specifically on Clark, is, an interesting case because it's hard. That's a harder one to tell when you see what her brand is on the public spectrum, which is, I think, if you go outside looking into the layman, they just see her as, a hot shooter, someone that can hit from anywhere on the floor. But the more you watch her game, it can go beyond that. And I think the numbers are starting to slowly reflect that.